Well, everyone, we're here from a gentleman from Wisconsin. He is running for the lieutenant governor, and it's sort of new from what I found out from him a couple of days ago how the lieutenant governor and governor elections are different. His name is Nick Polce, and there he is there, Protect the Future. And then I'm going to give you a little bio on him. Nick Polce is a father, husband, businessman, and veteran. After graduating from college, Nick chose to serve his country, enlisting in the Army. His dedication led him to serve as an active duty U.S. Army Special Forces soldier from 2002 to 2014, a role commonly known as a Green Beret. After serving, Nick began his life in the private sector as an entrepreneur and investor, boldly charting his path in the world of business innovation. He later took the helm of a thriving third-generation Wisconsin family business, a true cornerstone in the state's southeastern region, where he led operations and inspired his teams. And without any further delay, and here is Nick. Welcome, Nick.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for, I'm sorry for that little snafu, but it kicked me out and the ending went by, or the opening went bye-bye. But anyway, as we said before we came on, you are running for lieutenant governor, and it's different from Illinois because in Illinois, your governor and your lieutenant governor run on the same ticket. Now, is that beneficial? Do you think how your Wisconsin state does it, where you have your governor running separately than your lieutenant governor?
Yeah, again, thanks for having me on. So yeah, it's a little bit different up here than down your neck of the woods. So here we run separate primaries. So lieutenant governor candidate runs in his or her own primary separate from the governor. And then after the primary, the voters vote who they want governor, lieutenant governor for each party. And then those two people run together as a ticket for about the last 8 weeks. I mean, it has its pros and cons. I like the individual races. Gets an opportunity for the voters to decide who they think should be the governor candidate, who they think should be the lieutenant governor candidate, and then they make that decision, and then those two people are matched up for the final push in the general.
Now, how does that really work if you have a Democrat on either side and a Republican on the other side? Does that affect how it works?
So in the primary, if you're going to vote for either Republican or Democrat, you vote for a Republican ticket, you vote for the Democrat ticket, and then in the coming out of the primary, you have the Republican Party and Democrat Party is who you can vote for. You can't vote one governor, say Democrat governor, and then Republican lieutenant governor in the general election. You'd have to vote governor, Democrat, and lieutenant governor, or Republican governor, lieutenant governor.
Okay, yeah. So in reality, in the general election, you're going to be voting both the Republican lieutenant governor, or Democrat governor, lieutenant governor, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, cool. All right, so that cleared it up in my mind because I was a little bit confused on that one when you first told me that. So anyway, I looked at your agenda. It looks pretty good, and we're going to start out with Unleash the Wisconsin Economy. Now, what is one? I know you have a lot of cattle and dairy up there, and other than that, what type of economy are you looking into?
So we got a variety of things. We have manufacturing. You mentioned the ag. We have lumber. We have some technology, tourism. So there's a very diverse economic base up here. When I talk about unleashing the Wisconsin economy, it comes down to a couple things. One of them is regulation. So we have the second most regulated state in the Midwest, behind only your state of Illinois. So of all the states in the Midwest, Wisconsin is the second highest regulated state. And that causes all kinds of problems. It causes costs to go up. It makes it harder for folks to start their business or to run their business. So part of that unleashing is getting rid of a lot of those useless regulations so that people have more freedom. And because people at their lowest level, whether it's your family, whether it's your community, you know best how to spend your own money better than a bureaucrat in Madison does.
In other words, in a way, it's what Trump has been trying to do, trying to get rid of a lot of the red tape to reduce that time. So would you first attack it at trying to reduce the time it takes to go ahead and get some things done, or just cut some of the unnecessary regulations, which we know costs more money to make an effect?
Sure. So there's a couple of bills right now working their way through the Assembly and the Senate, which would focus on cutting, identifying regulations that are useless or that have run out of their time, and then start to get rid of them altogether. So I'd be in favor of taking a look at those regulations as soon as we get in and start dialing them back. Let the Assembly do their evaluation, the Senate do the evaluation, and then once those regulations are no longer necessary, just get rid of them. Second part of that is what you're talking about with President Trump, where if you're going to propose a new regulation, then you have to have what, 4 that you get rid of. And that should also be an item that we get going here once we get a Republican governor in the Madison, is to do something like that as well.
So what is the biggest regulation that would be the first one to try to get rid of to help jump the economy?
Oh man, there's all kinds. If we think about, let's just take on the building housing, right? Because one of the things we hear constantly up here is affordability, affordability, affordability. So on the housing side, we got young people that are getting priced out of buying homes. There's all kinds of regulations related to whether it's on the how you can build, what you can't build, those type of items. Think about, they put a floor in on home builders for what they can or can't sell. So even if you want to build a house which is less than a certain dollar amount, you can't because of the number of regulations coming out of Madison specifically tied to home builders.
Now, what I heard one of my customers came in the gas station today because I told her I was going to have you on from Wisconsin, and she goes, the price of a house up there is more than usually a price of a house in Illinois. But the thing what makes it difference is the taxes when you buy that home. Now, have you heard that effect?
Sure. So property taxes here are less than where they are in Illinois. So there's a give and take, right? So we are also going through, we had our governor here that signed a 400-year property tax increase creatively using the line item veto. So that is another pain point up here for affordability and the cost of living. And so we get a Republican governor, lieutenant governor, and we hold the Assembly and the Senate in 27 or 26 election going into 27 Assembly year or the legislative year, and those increases in property taxes to start to drive down property taxes.
Okay. Do you think another thing is like some of the states and cities is the influx of immigration?
Sure. We have a certain amount of illegal immigration here in Wisconsin. Like the rest of the country, we don't really know how many are here. There's estimates of 75 to 100,000 or so folks. And so as President Trump has secured the border and as he's focused on starting the removal and making it harder and harder for those folks to get access to a lot of benefits that the Biden administration had, that's going to cause a lot of them to head back to where they came from, which then should start to open up things like housing and other items, which will bring down some of those prices.
It should be include housing, cost of goods, everything else, because, to me, it's like a supply and demand issue. We have an influx of immigrants, of course, taking up housing that, it's there, more food. So, and once the illegals, they're truly illegal, and hopefully get rid of the bad ones and then reduce that. And like you said, and I think I agree with you, and that the cost of those goods and housing should go down and make more readily available units out there.
Well, we think too on that is the amount of fraud that is continues to pop up. The most recent example is what's happening in Minneapolis. Then you have the homeless industrial complex out of California, which has all kinds of potential fraud and overruns with costs. You have HUD identifying billions and billions of fraud. It seems like every few weeks here we get more and more examples of fraud. And so auditing, to your point, identifying where all this money's going, and then deciding, hey, who shouldn't be getting it? Let's walk it back. And that's also going to help us drive down costs, because you have all this additional cash that shouldn't have been going to certain people, goes back into for Americans. And then we can look at cutting our budgets as well, because there's all this excess cash that was going to waste, fraud, and abuse.
So that's one reason it makes you a grassroots candidate, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep. That's what it's about. It's about the grassroots out there, other than the established GOP or the established Democrats. And so we touched on regulations on that one. Government spending.
Sure.
Now,
So wait, go ahead.
we know Illinois is well over the government spending. They're spending more than what they're bringing in. And so go ahead. I know Illinois' issues. What about Wisconsin?
So comparatively, Wisconsin, we're in better shape. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the last about 8 years is that our spending at the state level has risen about 50%. And we're not getting 50% better services. We're not getting 50% better use of government, right? So back to my earlier comment about auditing, one of the things that we have to do once we win back the governor's mansion is to start auditing all these programs to find out where the money's going. Because the government spending, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level, there's no, the incentive model is all wrong. Because you think, and you're in a government bureaucrat role, there's no incentive to be frugal with your money the way you are if you're in charge of a family or if you're running a business. Because you go to the assembly at the end of the year and they say, how much money you got left? And you say, I spent it all. So you need to give me more money in the next budget. Whereas if you were to go to the legislature at the end of the year and say, hey, I was a good steward, I only spent 80% of the budget that you gave me, they're going to say, fantastic. You don't need 100%. You're only going to get 80% next year. And we're going to allocate additional money to the folks that are spending or overspending their budget. So on the incentive model, we have to fix and we have to change it at the federal level and at the state level so that our elected officials have good oversight over our bureaucrats and they're more focused on being frugal and spending wisely instead of spending it all.
Well, and you're right, because you just hit a point on that. Because you and I were both in the military, and we looked at budget because they gave you so much operating budget for your department or stuff like that. And if you didn't use that amount, they would take it away from you. Next year, you wouldn't get that amount. But the only thing, spend up to that amount, but don't overspend, because this is what causing the states like Wisconsin, Illinois, to start increasing taxes and taxes on the population. And the thing is, you're just breaking the backs of the taxpayers.
Right. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And that's
same as Illinois.
Need to focus. Yes.
Same as Illinois. So I don't know why they threw it across the border to you or you guys do it to us, but we both have the same issue. Not a revenue problem, a spending problem.
Yes.
And so taxes. Now, yeah, we each need to know your state has their taxes. We have ours. What is one tax that you would either try to eliminate or reduce?
Well, we talked about property taxes in the beginning. Those are constantly increasing. You think about folks that are on a fixed income or they worked their whole life and they're retired, paid off the house, and now every year they're having to budget more and more money into their payment because property taxes keep going up. So that'd be one. And then the second part of it would be on the income tax is drop that too. We're taking too much money out of the pocket of the Wisconsin worker, the Wisconsin business owner. And really back to, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. That money should be staying with the folks that earn it, not going to the capital and getting misallocated or spent foolishly.
Now, you're a business person, from what I read on your bio. Now, how do you work your budget and try to forecast what you have coming in and work from within that for the following year?
That's right. You got a plan. On the business side, you work for somebody or you run your own business. You don't have the ability to print money like when they do at the federal government level. You have the ability to go through the force of law, extract money via taxes. So you have to be frugal. You got to be focused, and you got to constantly be adjusting it based off of how much revenue you're generating and manage your expenses. And that type of mentality we have to have and here we're talking about this race, we have to have in Madison. We have to have the executive branch, and we haven't had that the last 8 years, as we talked about with the 50% increase in spending, increase in property taxes. And then we haven't talked about it yet, but the energy is also a big issue here. Our energy costs continue to increase because of some of the mandates that we've unfortunately signed into law in the last decade and a half.
Now, up in Wisconsin, do you have a lot of wind farms, windmills, and solar panels? Because from what I've researched and I've listened and learned is that renewable energy only accounts for like 7% of the total energy that we use. Now, I don't know if that's what it's like up in Wisconsin or not.
There is a lot of frustration related to the mandates, specifically on solar and wind. So back in about 2008, we had Governor Doyle signed a law that said that by a certain time, Wisconsin had to have 10% of its energy from wind and solar. And then that got accelerated under Governor Evers recently, where it was a larger than 10%. So when you put those mandates in place, you're forcing energy companies to take certain action that they wouldn't necessarily take on their own, so that they can make those mandates. And what's happening is it's causing prices to go up. One, because we're having to pay for more expensive energy and it's not reliable. And two, because of the mandates, we're doing things like shutting down coal power plants, which is decreasing our supply of reliable energy, which then is serving to also drive up our energy costs. So that particular mandates when it comes to solar and wind is a big pain point, and it's one of the things that we want to address come 2027, because there's a lot of people upset with that.
Well, yes, same thing, I think, all over the nation. And like I always said, renewable energy is good, but the thing is, we're not at that apex yet to where we have our fossil fuels up here and the renewable energies down here. Until that comes up to meet the amount of fossil fuels, we cannot sustain ourselves on renewable energy. And that's because it's unreliable. I mean, you get your windmills, they freeze up during the wintertime, a lot of them do. Then what happens when they're covered with snow? You have no sunshine for a while. Then you're going to put more out. Then you have blackouts rolling out that could be possible. And what do you think about the data centers that they want to put in these different cities and states?
Well, sure. So you nailed that on the head related to the energy. The other part of that is the mandate. So if you want to go and buy wind or buy solar and yourself, and that's a choice you're making, hey, cool, do it. It's the mandates of forcing utility companies to have to use that energy, or forcing folks to put that energy in certain locations. That's where the problem becomes. Is if those industries could thrive on their own, and they should. We haven't seen that for a long time, and we're still in the last states. We're seeing this still the forcing of the mandates and the subsidies, and that's a big problem. As you were bringing up.
Somehow it lost me again, but I'm back on.
Okay. All right. I was getting ready to go on my own here.
Yeah, you should have. The first thing, lost both of us. I'm going, whoa. But it's good old internet for you. And I'm hardwired in. I'm not using wireless. So I think the last thing you were talking about was the mandates for electricity. And this is my personal feeling, that with these data centers coming in that take up so much more energy, should not they be paying more per kilowatt hour than your normal consumers to help make up for the difference?
Oh, I think there's a couple ways that we can and should approach that, and it comes back to regulations, right? So the regulations in place which prevent some of the more creative ways of solving those increasing energy problems that we've seen when those AI data centers show up. So a couple things we could do. One is that they data center pays a higher rate, like you mentioned. So if they're put in a certain location and they're paying a higher rate than the residents who live around them, or if the prices are going up, they're paying the residents a certain percentage of the residents' bill for the increase in pricing. The other thing is that they are authorized, and again, we change regulations so that they can build their own power centers that don't even plug into the grids at all. So it won't affect any of the power around that area in the residential or the commercial properties. And those AI data centers are powered all by themselves. But that's the regulation piece that we have to change, which I support. And I think President Trump is working hard to do that at the federal level. And now we need to do it at some of the state levels.
Well, how do you think, if you could get it going to change that mandate, to have that happen, to help save the American consumers out there, where they're electric bills have doubled sometimes in some instances.
You mean related to the data centers getting put in?
Well, the mandates to try to get that done, and also mandate it to where they pay a higher cost per electric
Right.
hour than the regular consumer does. Because why should we bear, you, I, and all the consumers, the cost of running these data centers?
No, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. The short term or the fastest way to address that would be to change. I think the legislature can do it, and we have the PSC up here, the Public Service Commission, which regulates all the utilities. They can also take action, and then there's some bills working their way through the assembly here to work on that, which should be, yeah. If the rates are going up, absolutely, the data center or the companies that own them should be paying that increasing cost. Short term, longer term is allow them to build their own energy source there, powers themselves, so they're not even plugging into the grid. So there's a couple different ways we can do it. Short term, longer term, that will solve those increasing prices, because no one around those locations should be bearing the cost of increasing energy because of the production in those data centers.
Right. That's how I feel because, I'm a taxpayer and I pay electric, and it's like, I don't feel I should be paying their share for these data centers. And the thing is, it's like I came from Spain. I was spent 3 nights over in Spain before coming back on a cruise in March. And about a month after that, Spain was out of power. They had a complete blackout, and they are basically renewable energy. So that shows their power grid when they don't have enough sunshine and all that. That's why they had their power outage. So we do not need that happening here in the United States.
No, and for the longest time we've had reliable, cheap energy, and unfortunately we haven't taken action in the last 3 decades or so, upgrading our grid. And then we had some silly mandates pushing green renewable energy that doesn't work, and here we are with rates increasing higher and higher.
Right, exactly, dead on that one. And then now that all goes back to this right here, leadership. Now,
Yeah.
I know you don't really want to dog out your current leadership, but give me about 3 top things that they are doing that what you would change.
So currently at the state level, we've talked about taxes going up. We talked about energy costs going up. We've also we haven't got to it yet, but on the healthcare side, that's also a big area related to affordability. That there's things that we can do here in Wisconsin to work on driving down those costs while we wait for the federal government to take action on their end. And so those items that we've already talked through, plus healthcare, and then we'll maybe eventually get into education, are items that our leaders in the executive branch right now, the governor, lieutenant governor, and the folks that work for him could take, and they're not. They're choosing not to. They're taking a different track, and because of that, cost of living is going up. We're getting poor. Our kids are feeling like there's American dream that they may be losing, or they can't chase the way that I did, the way that my father's generation did, and that to me breaks my heart.
It does. So I almost lost my train of thought on that one. I think I did. But let's see. What was I going to say here? We talked about electric. Now, as per coal in Wisconsin, is there abundance of coal? Is there enough coal in Wisconsin to help and go back to that and possibly kick up these coal power plants?
So we don't have any coal organic here in Wisconsin. We import, just like we import our natural gas. So rough breakdown, our energy, we have about 40-ish, 45% natural gas. We have about 30%-ish coal. We have about 10% nuclear, and then we have about 10%-ish renewable. And so if we're going to keep those coal power plants from shutting down, we could just continue to import coal and increase the level. We could do the same thing on natural gas. Most of our natural gas gets pumped in through pipelines coming north from Texas. There's no reason why we can't increase the supply of natural gas. That's a thing that we can do. We could work with the federal government to make that happen. We just have chose not to do it. And the choices that we've been making are, let's get more solar, let's get more wind. And what we're finding is it's not reliable, and it's more expensive. And then on top of that, some of those regulations coming out of the Evers administration, in addition to the EPA under Biden, are making it harder and harder to keep coal power plants open.
But the only thing sometimes I wonder, why do the states always want to wait for the federal government instead of taking the initiative upon themselves to make like a leadership for the rest of the states?
Sure. And we haven't talked nuclear, right? So there's no reason why we can't increase our nuclear production here in Wisconsin. The technology is much farther ahead the last couple of decades. You can make smaller, you can make the large plants, or you can make those smaller areas, and we can and should do that too. Anybody that wants clean energy, that's about as clean as you can get. It's reliable, and we just haven't as a nation, and then particularly in this state, a focus on getting that online. And it feels like we're playing from behind. And President Trump is
Right.
trying to fix that, right? He's trying to make it easier to get permitting done and make it easier to get development done. And that same type of thinking we have to do here at the state level, make it easier to permit, make it easier to bring new energy online and not have it caught up in red tape for a long time.
Exactly. Yep. That's what I was wanting to get to, is out there. Security. Now, security can mean a lot of different things. It can mean, local security for your neighborhoods, for the state, or for the country. So when you said security, enlighten me what you mean on security.
Sure. So it's a couple things to me. It's one, it's on our law enforcement, our making sure that we protect our law enforcement, look out for them because they're looking out for us, right? So it's supporting them. It's making sure that they're funded and making sure that they're able to operate. We don't want this state to become a sanctuary state. We already have some governor candidates on the Democrat side in this election that are talking about not wanting to work with ICE. They're not wanting to have ICE operate and not wanting to enforce immigration laws within the state. Now we have a little bit of a sanctuary city in our county in Dane County around our capital. So we have a little bit of that still, and we don't want that to go across the state. So when I talk about security, it's also securing our border in support of President Trump. And I joke about building a wall on the western border along the Mississippi River to keep all the crazy that's coming out of Minneapolis and keep it from coming across the
Exactly.
river in Wisconsin, trying to keep this state as a beacon of freedom in the Midwest. And so as I talk about security, I joke on that, but it comes down to keeping our citizens safe here in Wisconsin by supporting our law enforcement and also supporting and working with our immigration officials to do what President Trump was elected to do, which is to deport, which is to secure the border and then start to get rid of all the criminal illegals that have been here for a long time.
Well, I'm going to say this because it'd be hard for you to maybe say it, but I can say it because of what I do. Uh, all these protesters that's in Minneapolis, I don't think you have much going on there in Wisconsin, but they don't understand. They're protesting for people that would not be out there protesting for them. So that's what I want to have to say on that, because if you don't see, these people that's protesting, they're just blindfolded to what's going on, and the ones they're protesting for would not back them up 1% Okay, so that's my input to that. And of course, cybersecurity. What do you think about that?
So as it relates to the state or the
State,
country,
power grid, everything.
power grid. Yeah, sure. So on the power grid side, we have not spent the resources that we need to upgrade our power, and there's a lot more remoteness. There's a lot more items connected to the internet, which presents that threat of cyber attacks, grid going down. And so a part of that upgrade to the grid is a focus on how do we harden it? How do we make it harder for someone to do some type of cyber attack, which would cause us a lot of problems if they were successful?
Right. That's basically I just wanted to get on that one. Election integrity. Oh my goodness. It's really starting to hit the fan the last day.
Yes.
And I already had a show on that a while back with a gentleman out of Illinois that was down in Atlanta, I think, during the 21 midterm elections. And he did notice fraud going on when he was a watcher, and he's a lawyer. And now all this stuff is coming out. So I do know a person that's running for a Congress in Illinois. He also had some people that were illegally voting. So how do we tighten up the election integrity? Do we all go back to photo ID for the general election, which should be the way it should be, because there's so many times you have to have an ID to go to the doctor's office. You have to have ID. A lot of bars, if you want to go to a bar, you got to show your ID. So what is the difference of not having an ID to vote, especially if maybe they can't drive for some reason because of the background? Can't they still get a state ID?
Sure. There's a lot of action that we could specifically take related to ID. That whole, if you're somehow going to suppress voting because you limit the people that can vote if they don't have ID, that's just, to me, is just a straw man argument. It's not, in this day and age, it's not something that we can't overcome. Like, to your point, there's so many things that we just take for granted that you have to have an ID for in this country to do. So yeah, 100% with the ID. So a couple of things. So we talked specifically about Wisconsin. We're pretty good when it comes to voter ID and balancing a lot of people voting versus having a voter ID when you go to vote. There are a couple of things we could do. We run our elections out of what's called the Wisconsin Election Commission, the WEC, and so it's a politically appointed group of individuals at the top, and then it's a bureaucracy that was created out of a scandal during the Walker administration when there was investigations going after Governor Walker, and then they got rid of the government accountability board, and they created a WEC. And there's a bunch of other details to that, but I don't want to get into details on that because it's outside the scope of this. So we have that. Well, to me, we should not have our election run by a group that's separate from a constitutionally elected official. So I'd like to see us get rid of the WEC, move elections back underneath the Secretary of State. Secretary of State's a constitutionally elected official, and that office can and should run elections. That's one thing. The second thing on that is how we run our elections. Voter ID for sure, making it very hard to not absentee ballots serve their purpose, but with COVID, we got a little bit more robust. So we used to be very restrictive here. Best way to describe it is you have to have a legitimate reason
Exactly.
why you were going to request an absentee ballot. You're sick, you're in the hospital, you're in infirmary for something, things like that. Outside of that, absentee ballots were not generally, or military, right? If you're overseas.
Exactly.
Return back to that type of setting where you have to vote in person. And if you do need a legitimate reason why you do absentee ballot, okay. But the idea of anybody getting absentee ballots and using them, I think we have to dial that back as well.
Now, for your general election, do you have a early voting for that? And when does your general election happen up there in Wisconsin?
We do. So for our primary and our generals, the early voting starts about 2 weeks before the election. So the general election is the first Tuesday in November for us, and then for the primary, it's August 14th, I think, is our primary election. And so it's about 2 weeks from that is when we have our early voting.
So, just like I try to tell people, and you probably do the same thing with your early voting, don't wait until the day of election because something could happen that day of the election and you don't get there and get out and vote. So, everybody, and I think Nick will back me up on this, if you want to and you should get out there and go vote early. That way, you don't take a chance of something happening that would keep you from voting on election day.
Yeah, it makes sense. If we're going to have the early voting window, to your point, exercise it. It kind of goes pros and cons, right? Because on the one hand, it helps with, okay, that person, if you're tracking it, okay, we know James voted, so we don't have to keep mailing James. We don't have to keep calling James to go vote. On the other hand, he gets to see who voted, and so then you can start to tally votes and figure out how many votes you potentially need to win. And so there's pros and cons to having it. If you have it, I agree with you. Get out and vote early and get it done so that nothing happens preventing you from getting it.
And where are you actually located in Wisconsin, you yourself?
So I'm in Walworth County.
Okay. And where is that in relation to Madison and Milwaukee for the people that don't know?
Sure. So Walworth County, we're border up against Illinois. So we're in the southeast part of the state. So it's roughly an hour northwest to Madison and roughly an hour northeast to Milwaukee. So we're kind of, think about, we're at the bottom of a V where I'm at, and it's about the same distance going northwest or northeast to Madison, Milwaukee.
And then, of course, Milwaukee's predominantly probably Democrat, if I and Madison problem. So everyone, listen to what Nick's saying out here. Listen to what he's putting out there and what the challenges he has. Because if you want to be like Illinois and you don't vote red, you could be right behind where Illinois is at. So yeah, you don't want to be there.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Now we're going to go into family, and then the family has a couple of more subdivisions below that. So tell me what you meant about family.
So with my family is the grounding for me, right? It's the nucleus, and it's where all we break bread over the table. We spend a lot of time together. I grew up in a big family, so that to me is where the start is, right? You grow up, you pass on your values, you teach your children how to be good Americans, how to be good people before they go out into the world. So as I mentioned that, in my why for running and my why for getting into the race is my little guy. I mean, he's the reason why I decided to run. I don't want him growing up in a state that he can't afford. I don't want him growing up in a country that he can't afford. And I want him to have the same opportunities, if not more opportunities, that I had to chase dreams, that my father had to chase dreams. And it seems like, what feels like, this 2026 election, there's a really stark contrast. On the one hand, we have this socialist collectivist mindset that's popping up. We saw it with the election of Mamdani in New York, socialist mayor in Seattle. In Wisconsin here, there's a lot of rhetoric that's pushing left. You're seeing some of the collectivist policies play out in Minneapolis as they're attacking law enforcement. So those are just some of the pockets. And on the other side, we have us folks that believe in freedom, that American values, that love this country and its 250-year history that we're going to see in this summer. And so he's why I jumped in, and he's why I want to win, and he's why I want to be the second highest elected official in Wisconsin to be an advocate for him and for that generation.
Right. And I tell a lot of people too, I don't know if you watch what's happening in Europe or not, England, Great Britain, Germany, Ireland. If we don't watch what's going on over there and wake up, Great Britain's basically down the tubes. Paris is not longer what it used to be. And they're being infiltrated and from within. And that's what's happening here in the United States. If you as American citizen, take a look what's happening over there across the big pond, because we don't stop it, it's going to come here right in your front doors. And you will not have the country that we have known for 250 years. So wake up, watch and listen, and pray to God it don't come here, because it's already starting to come here. Another thing, like you said about family, your family is a core, and spend time together, that valuable time. Yeah, there are no families are busy working here, working there, but you got to make time to take care of those children, and not just let them run the streets and do what they want to do, because have that family time, pray, eat together, instead of, okay, go get your snack, come back. I mean, sit down and have a family value together, watch movies together, because there's where this core is starting to disappear at, and the families are starting to break up. Not really break up, but there's no cohesiveness in the family. And I think that's what we're losing a lot of our values at.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
All right. Now, as we talked about taxes, everything else. Now, healthcare, we know that's an issue nationwide. Thank God I'm on Social Security, but healthcare costs are going up. The Obamacare is bad, but it was bad when it first came out. So tell me what your input is on healthcare and what you would do to try to improve it.
Sure. So one of the ways to think about that is in this country, imagine going into a grocery store and you walked around and you grabbed out bread, eggs, milk, steak, Fruity Pebbles, whatever, threw it in your shopping cart, and then you walked out. And then 30 days later or 45 days later, you got a bill. And some of the stuff is paid for, and some of the stuff, holy cow, I paid $1,000 for an ounce of steak, or I paid $500 for a loaf of bread. And what we would never allow that to happen. We would never tolerate that. And in many ways, that's our current healthcare system, where you go to the doctor, you have no idea a cost of anything. You leave. Sometimes it might be a small copay when you leave, depending on your plan. And then you get a bill 30 days, 45 days later with a bunch of costs. And sometimes the insurance company pays for it, and sometimes they don't. And now you're fighting with the insurance company on different coding and line item. And I'm oversimplifying it in a way that, but why is it that when we go to the doctors, or we go to the hospital, or we go to any healthcare provider, we have no idea what the cost of anything is before we even start? So the first step here in this state is we have transparent pricing. Just like you go into any store, you go buy a car, you buy food, wherever, a cost before you decide to exchange dollars for that product or that service. And if you don't like it, you shop it, you go to a different place, you have competition, which allows, a lot of times, drives down costs. So number one is have transparent pricing. We've seen it work in places like Oklahoma, where they have cost before you take action on it, and you can shop around. That'd be step number one. Second thing we could do at the state level is we could allow more insurance companies to sell into Wisconsin. So we talked earlier about regulations. We talked earlier about mandates. One of the regulations that we have here is that there are only certain health insurance companies that can sell their plans here. So we're limiting the amount of supply of plans, which then limits the consumer's choice, which, when you have a limited supply and you have demand that's increasing, your costs are going to go up. That's the second thing we do. A third thing we could do here again in Wisconsin is our specific health insurance plans that those companies are allowed to sell have a bunch of mandates. So even if a health insurance company wanted to sell a very slimmed down plan, or if I as an individual wanted to buy a certain plan, by law, the legislature says all insurance companies that are allowed to sell here have to sell a variety of products. So even if I don't use XYZ, or men and women are different, right? So they have different requirements for their healthcare. Everybody has to get a certain amount of things in their health insurance plan, which then puts a floor on what you can pay and drives up costs. So there's three things we could do here in the state that would drive down costs if we implemented them.
Yep. And then also, I don't know if it's true, I've heard it, that if you go in, you have enough money to pay for your health care, that cost is going to be cheaper than what they charge the insurance companies. Have you heard that too?
Oh yeah, sure. We've seen it, because that doctor or that healthcare provider, they don't have to deal with all the paperwork and all the back and forth and all the time. You think about all the time it takes to do that. And now, so we can cut down costs. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm going to get a cast that's going to be $300. Here's $300. You get the cast and you're on your way. Sure.
Yeah, but then they charge somebody that has insurance. They'll charge an insurance company for the same cast, what, $1,500 or more? Is that,
right,
that's not. So, I mean, maybe that's something to look at. Let's say, what is the actual cost of what you charge? What are you charging these insurance companies? Cut that in half, because that way it accounts for their paperwork and stuff. And that way, to me, I would like to see something like that targeted. I don't know, because of course the insurance company is going to fight it because they're making off like a fat cow. But I think that would be a good step.
No, and on that, so one of the, you brought up Obamacare when we first started talking about this, and all the that was terrible. We're seeing it 15 years later how bad it actually has become.
Right.
One of the things in Obamacare is they're essentially mandating. They said, hey, your insurance company can only make a certain percentage profit. Like, we're going to cap your profit. Well, people are very creative, right? And there's ways to get creative with billing and this, that, and the other thing. And so if you're going to cap the profit on one way, then if costs are going up for a business, they're going to look for other ways to recapture some of those costs. And so by capping that and limiting competition through Obamacare, it's helping to increase our cost of healthcare. So that's a terrible law. We got to get rid of it.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Sounds good on that one. And we're getting short on time. Education. Go ahead with your topic on that one.
No, so on the education, so I think anybody would disagree. We all want good schools. We all want our kids to have a quality education, and we want our parents to have the choice of where to send their child, whether they're deciding on public school, whether they're deciding on private school, whether they're deciding on other, homeschool or charter school, anything like that. To me, it should be the parent should decide where he or she wants to send their child, and then the money should follow that child. Because again, the folks at the closest to the problem best know how to solve that problem and best know how to spend their money. So the focus for me on schools is quality education for our kids and choice for parents.
Now, what about some of the books that they're allowing in these younger elementary schools? Because I know a woman who's running for a rep position in Illinois, and she quit teaching because of what's being taught in the schools. How would you address or how will you address that?
Yeah, so I'm sure it's probably talking about some of the liberal ideology or the wokeness. We got to get woke out of our school. No boys and girls sports. No men or boys and girls bathrooms like that. That's nuts. That stuff has to end. So what are things that I can do as lieutenant governor? I can be a voice. I can be an advocate. I can bring awareness. I can hyper focus on certain issues because of the role that I'm in. We have the power to convene in that position where you get people together. The other part of it is the power of the purse. So the assembly here in Wisconsin has the power of the purse, and they have to, which they're doing, but they have to continue to do more once we get a Republican governor in, and use that to make sure that they are focused on getting a lot of that silliness, the wokeness out of schools, and through that power of the purse.
Well, do you also think the teachers union has too much pull?
Yeah, the teachers union is we're seeing a lot across the country. It's a lot of times it's not necessarily focused on the kids and on what's best for that child and that parent and that individual school. I mean, we're seeing it, and so I would agree that they do have in some states do have a lot of power for sure.
Okay, and one more thing. What's your final pitch for you as lieutenant governor, or what you want people of the state of Wisconsin to know? And whatever your final pitch is, lay it out there and lay it out tough.
All right, so I look at this role, lieutenant governor, as an advocate, someone that's a voice that can bring issues, bring awareness to issues, and operate as a leader. So this race is not about me. This race is about the people here in Wisconsin that are looking for a leader that's going to lead the state, and that's the role that I want to take, and that's the role I can take in that position. It's things like being a robust advocate, crisscrossing the state, preaching the messages of freedom, identifying areas we can get people together to solve problems, and try to do as much as we can to return power to the most local level and get it out of Madison.
So on this website below, people can also send questions to you and try to get out what their opinions are, and you can respond back to them. So people, out here, listen to Nick. There's his website below. All right, Nick Polce Candidate, Wisconsin Governor, www.nicholaspulse.com. And if you have questions, email them. This is what these candidates want. They want to hear from you, because if they are a true grassroots candidate, they're going to work for you and not just for themselves. Other than that, anything else, Nick?
James, thank you for your time. I appreciate coming on the show and opportunity to say hi and speak with your audience. And thanks for the interview.
Yeah, and I'll send you this. You can spread it out with whoever you want. And for right now, I want to say you're watching James Fraher, your host of World Events from Illinois. Although I have Wisconsin here, but who cares? We're all in it together. We're all going to sink or swim in the same boat together. But anyway, I want to say God bless Nick on his endeavor. I want to say God bless to everyone. God bless these United States of America, and hope. Let's pray for peace and some mending in this United States. So for right now, thank you and goodbye, Nick. I'll meet you in the green room real quick.
Okay. Thanks, James.
Thank you.